Hi, welcome back to Future Fast. And once again, we have this very special guest, Gulrez. And most of you, or any of you who have missed the first part of our conversation where he shares about his journey, you have truly missed something. I sincerely urge you, please go back, look up the first part of the conversation, and then come here because you will be able to connect where his perspectives are coming from with that long journey that we discussed. So please do go back and listen to it and then come in for this conversation. And I'm truly excited about this conversation, and I'm sure you will also enjoy it. And if you have not yet subscribed to Future Fast, please do it now. Well, once again, Gulrez, thank you so much for making time to be here with us on Future Fast.
Thank you, Nanju. Last time, it's a pleasure to be here.
So, Gulrez, just jumping straight into why Hikmat Foundation. Maybe start with why the name Hikmat.
So, Hikmat is an Urdu word, Nanju, and it basically means wisdom, knowledge. I thought I liked this sort of ring of the word. And uh, I should also confess that there is a very big pharmaceutical company in the Middle East. I think it's out of Jordan. In Arabic, they don't say hikmat, the th is silent, unless it's joined with a word. So the name of that company is Hikma. And Hikma is a very successful pharmaceutical company, but they also do a lot of work outside of medicines and pharmaceutical works. And both the ring of the word and my last association with that name, I thought, why not? I mean, we are trying to work in the field of education. So Hikmat, instead of calling it wisdom, let me use a Urdu word and say it's Hikmat.
And one thing which I'm very curious about is that I mean, what you did was uh, uh, on work on the policy side, but also on implementation, execution, and overseeing the execution at a global scale, at a country level. And even your last assignment was policy at a state level. So, and which is rightly so, you brought your global experience into trying to help your home state, and also you mentioned that you had a personal agenda also to move back to home. But with all that, I'm sure you could have probably gone back to Delhi and did something at a global scale or even at a pan India scale. Why did you try to go back to your village? And what was that motivation for?
So I think in the previous conversation, we talked a little bit about, I had this sense that I was missing the first mile, or I didn't know about the last mile, depending on how you think of it. I started off, basically going to boarding school and sort of moved out. And I had very little knowledge of what happens at the village level. So that was an attraction. And then, secondly, it was my home rural area. There is a risk, of course, that as you go more and more micro, you tend to get lost amongst the trees. And that risk is always there. But the flip side is that a lot of us friends, they talk about think tanks. And maybe I thought that not a think tank, but let's do a think do. And people say that you guys only talk and you pontificate, and now that you're not in service, you criticize everything. So let's give it a shot and see if I can handle the pressures of working. So being mindful of the risks of sort of getting lost among the trees, I thought it was worthy enough to try and have a shot at it. I must also confess that when I started it, I thought that after some time I would be able to delegate. and maybe I can go back to living in a metropolis and we will have people managing these things. But bootstrapping is what we are actually doing. I mean, you can have startups in NGOs as well. Uh,
Right.
and it's not just the financial part of it. It's the people part, and getting the people with the right sort of attitude has been challenging. So I just got more and more sucked in. But as we have been building up the teams, I still haven't lost hope that I would sort of withdraw a little bit and maybe let my team run a lot more of it. So that's where we are. We thought let's walk the talk, and that's what I'm trying to do in the village.
So you got started with this to starting point was more of self discovery from the perhaps from the to discover your own roots. Is that a right way of what you mentioned
I
to put
think
it?
that was it was a major factor. But I also, I guess one grew up with it. One always had this feeling. I'd seen my father doing something very similar. He was very active in his place. Uh, and I found that when I thought about doing this, it gave me immense pleasure. So maybe it was a very selfish action on my part. I mean, I am doing it for my pleasure. I don't see it as I'm giving back or I'm helping somebody. It helps me. And, my wife is involved, my children are involved.
Wow.
And I think it gives all of us immense pleasure. So it's a good thing to be doing. It gives me happiness, and I think it gives me something to be busy with. Uh,
I I think that's a very interesting thing, and I guess it again comes from the sincerity of your approach. That most times people try to say what the world likes to hear and leave out the self gratification part, and that is the biggest motivation. Uh, and but do you still find it self gratifying from the time you got started to today? It's been quite a journey, right? It's how many years
it's
now?
been
7, 8 years,
yeah.
9 years.
So actually, we started it in 2015. Our first school we started in 2016. I mean, as and more as we advance, you find more challenges and more difficulties. But when you see these girls and where they come from and what they have passed out as, we've had a number of batches who have matriculated, and the confident young ladies who could hardly talk when they entered class 6 or class 7, and they come out now and are sort of willing to stand in front and ask for things. That gives, I think that's very self-gratifying. I find it extremely happy and makes me really happy. I mean, I can't describe it any other way. It's a nice feeling to see these girls try and live up to their potential. I mean, I think the journey is just begun. We would like to see these girls who pass out from our schools grow into professionals, be economically independent. But there are challenges. They come from conservative background, they come from poor background. Higher education is an expensive thing in our country. Quality higher education is very expensive in our country. There are family pressures, there are social pressures. I mean, these are girls who, by the time they were 11, 12, 13, their parents were talking about marriages. I mean,
In
uh,
these days,
in these days.
wow.
And they would have gone to some village level school. Just the fact that they're matriculating and some of them are going on to do their graduation, in itself, I think, it just shows you what the potential is.
Well, but coming from IFC, right? I mean, uh, it was possibly a lot easy to think that money could solve biggest of problems, right? Or the access to the capital, and which you perhaps had more than anybody else. So, did it not uh, occur to you that okay, you know what, this is I could impact at a much bigger level. Probably I could bring $1 billion and push towards setting up 100 schools, 1,000 schools, rather than go, you know, I mean, does it not come to you? I mean, don't you think I could do something huge and perhaps across India, every district I can create uh, uh, Hikmat Foundation, or at least power the similar efforts across India, even if it is not as Hikmat, but you can actually light so many things. I mean, did it ever occur to you in that sense, or do you think
So,
like that?
yeah, so Nanju, I mean, a couple of uh, sort of presumptions or the facts. Firstly, let's see what we are trying to do. It's girls' education. I think it's a given that the best investment one could make in a society in terms of returns is to have your women educated. And this is proven
Absolutely.
across the board,
Yes.
across the
Yes.
globe. Okay. Now, the scale at which we need to get this done, I think no private enterprise or no non-for-profit institution can achieve that scale, in my view. That scale can only be done by the governments. Absent government interaction, absent government performance at the quality level where we expect them to operate, what does one do? Either you join the government and get them to focus on education, which in my view is a public good and which should be given to all citizens of this
Azim
country.
Premji Foundation actually started doing something on those lines, right? They work with the government schools, government education system, training the trainers, teachers, and uh, I think there are quite a few such foundations who are actually looking at in that approach. And perhaps among all of them, you had the best opportunity because you came from the government itself.
No, I have sort of explored what Azim Premji Foundation does, and I think they do a wonderful job. I didn't have the sort of firepower which the Azim Premji Foundation has. Now, your assumption is that maybe I could have gone out and mobilized uh, that type of quantum of funding. I don't know. I mean, that's something which needed to be tested out. And then Azim Premji tries to work. I mean, they have the universities, but most of the secondary and primary education, I think rightly, they go and try and work with governments. Because as I mentioned, that is where you get the scale.
Correct.
I didn't have that luxury. There's a context in Bihar where there are a lot of private investments in education. And these are sort of commercial enterprises, and the quality is very poor. So anybody who tries and gets into education, the first charge is that this guy is doing it for the money in it. Um, I did not want to go into scaling up till I have demonstrated my own success in running a few schools. And then I could go out and say, look, this is a model which we have. Can we scale it up?
But was that necessary for someone like you with such a vast experience? Not necessarily in education, but uh, why did you think that you still have to prove a point or demonstrate something? Because someone like you were to say, people would have still heard you, people would have still listened to you.
I mean, uh, I was not very familiar with rural Bihar or rural North India. Mind you, I've been away from the country for over 24 years. I've come
Mm,
for a brief period in Patna. I haven't sort of, so my roots were more in Delhi and Patna than in the rural Bihar, number one.
mm,
Uh, and number two, I mean, when I came back, I was on boards of companies. I was in renewable energy company. I was infrastructure company. I was on financial institutions in Egypt, in Bahrain, in Oman. Uh, so that was one track. Um, but I thought to myself, I mean, what after that? I mean, it didn't, I needed to get my hands dirty. Now, the initial thought was that let me in my phase one try and set up three schools, and then we'll see what we do. Do we scale up ourselves? Do we go out and get more money and replicate it? But here I am only with two schools and still struggling to get them up and going. And now we are deciding that instead of expanding horizontally into the third school, can we take these schools vertically up and connect them to the job market? So, absent the government, I mean, if I was Minister Education for a moment, one could visualize doing these things at a scale. Or if I had some political influence, one could visualize doing these things at a scale where they really matter. At this scale, we have to narrow down my district, selected blocks. Can I demonstrate that these girls who might be herding goats in the field or who are from very poor families can have that quality education which makes them compete with a girl who's going to the best missionary school in Patna or wherever. Now, that's the challenge. And I think for me to be able to do that, I had to be very small and manageable. Again, we were bootstrapping. I mean, one could say that I'm wasting my time trying to bootstrap at the field level and I should be raising the resources and hiring the right people to be bootstrapping at the village level. I I don't think I would have had that credibility. I would have that credibility if I was going around raising money for solar power stations in Western India, because I have done that. I would be, if I was working in private equity and raising money in private equity context. But to run girls' educations on a free mode with, very for very poor girls, this I was as untested as the second person in Lauria Nandangarh.
Well, just sidestepping a bit from this conversation, I'm just wondering the region you are operating in now and working in. It's not a place that people have to go and search if I'm getting the spelling right, right? It was there in the recent history also from Gandhi's thing, and as such, Bihar technically has been the cradle of knowledge system historically. And given all this, I'm just curious, in your last 10 years of this effort, is there something you found as where did this get lost? How did it become so backward that this kind of an effort was required despite it being recognized? There are very few such villages which are familiar to everybody, even from a textbook it is printed, right? Every textbook has this name there. And still, where did it get lost? Why is that place so backward then? I mean, if you are so familiar, it cannot be backward. Where did it get lose that opportunity?
No, I think that's a wonderful question. I mean, Champaran is not just Gandhi. Champaran is Buddha. I mean, we seldom link
Correct.
Buddha with Champaran, but I mean, he starts his journey into
Exactly. It's
seeking
got such
knowledge
a large
from
history.
Rampurva.
Yeah.
But all it's known for today, Nanju, is if you go to Patna or come to Delhi, is Champaran meat because they make a special mutton with
Oh,
mustard
okay. This I
oil.
didn't know.
No,
Okay.
I mean, jokes aside, where did we go wrong? I mean, it's not just Champaran. I think it's large parts of Bihar. I think it's large parts of East India. A lot of people have sort of tried to analyze it. Some people take it far back as the Permanent Settlement Act of Cornwallis. So we had the zamindari system, which was a very extractive process that gave birth to a very sort of virulent form of feudalism. So even today in Champaran, in spite of the Land Ceiling Act, there are some very large landowners. Um, Feudalism is rampant. Um, So it's a very exploitative society. Overlay that with the exploitative nature of the caste system. Now, those of us who live in cities don't like to talk much about caste. But if you come from the part of the country where I come from, and I'm sure it's not too different in many, even in South India, I mean, the single most important framework for analyzing societies is still caste, unfortunately.
No,
And
but
it's
with all this great history, where did it lose out? I mean, this is very
no,
funny.
so uh, all these things are, I think the single biggest deficit in our part of the world is governance. And governance is a deficit because of what I'm describing, uh, the elements in society, which is unequal land holdings, which is caste systems, which is feudalism. Um, South had its land reforms. Kerala had it the first. Karnataka had it. Tamil Nadu have it. In Telangana, of course, the communist movement was very strong. So that led to a lot of land reforms. Land reforms did not really take place in eastern UP and northern Bihar because the social class of the Congress leadership were the zamindars. So it was all sabotaged. I mean, it's a very strong word I'm using. Yes, you had socialist leaders, but even today, why is
Coming
it
from Bihar itself, right? The national leaders for socialism are actually coming from there.
so? I mean, I mean, people are writing books on why Bihar. It also has had very strong leftist movements in Bihar,
Correct.
in central Bihar. So those are all manifestations of the symptoms. I mean, people were struggling, uh, but population densities are very high. It's a very flood-affected area from the Nepal. I don't think of these things as excuses. I mean, these are the challenges which perhaps the leadership in Bihar has not been able to overcome and take it towards its glorious past. I mean, a lot of Bihari bright spots are sitting in Delhi and Bangalore and doing pretty well. Most of the migrant labor are from there. But we need a heavy dose of good governance to be able to overcome many of these challenges. You need industrialization, you need job creation, you need basic education. I started off by saying that education is a public good. I think public health is a public good. Policing is definitely a public good. Property rights in the nature of good land records is a public good. I mean, and these are all areas where you'll find deficits in governance. So I don't have a complete answer. But I do know that things are, well, I mean, extremely challenging. And Champaran is one of the poorest in this lot. I mean, the districts in central Bihar today are better off, but Champaran, if you look at female literacy, if you look at female dropout rates, if you look at certain social indicators, it's way behind even most of these districts in Bihar.
It's
So
so
it's
unfortunate, right? For all the history, it is so unfair. I saw the work you're doing is in Champaran. I'm like, why? Why is it this? I mean,
Yeah, well,
uh,
Champaran is home, so you have to begin your work from your house home, right?
no, I mean, of course, but what was difficult for me to comprehend is that with all that history, and it is still in that situation, which beats me. I mean, uh,
Well, I mean, uh, yeah, I mean, Champaran is, because of Gandhi's movement. Um,
no, but
and
not just that, right? I mean, historically, been, it's always been held high uh, at a knowledge, spiritual, intellectual, and it is lost, right? So,
yeah, I mean, I think Bihar generally, because of the Magadhan Empire, the Mauryan
yeah, I
empires,
mean, yeah,
and
if
the
you look at the
Gupta
whole,
Empire, uh, um, uh, Champaran, because I mean, Valmiki wrote his Ramayana from Valmiki Nagar, which
Oh
is
yeah,
not very.
yeah. If you go to prehistory, then
Uh, yeah. No, I mean, someday, Nanju, you should visit our area and maybe give us insights of what can be done to
I don't
change
know, but
matters.
that has been on my wish list, if you will, because it's crazy, right? Like from the prehistory to history to recent history. So I always wanted to see, but what was shocking for me when I was looking at your work is that why does such a place need this kind of an effort? Then it is so unfortunate with all that history.
So I think, I mean, as you mentioned, many parts of India would require
Correct,
a
correct.
stronger push on
But
education.
very rarely any of the other parts will have the kind of history Champaran has. That's the unfortunate.
Well, I don't know. I mean, many parts, I mean, Vijayanagara Empire. I mean, of course,
Perhaps, perhaps in the history books, so this will perhaps be the version 4 of Champaran with you. I think what you're doing will put it
no,
in
no,
the
no,
map
no,
again.
no, 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 no. I mean, there is just no
And hopefully
comparison.
it's not go back to the
We
similar
no,
situation.
we are just trying in extremely limited way to make a limited impact but an intensive impact on one or two or three blocks. I mean, we like to think that it's not sort of impact on scale yet as impact depth of the impact because we are taking in girls now and we're starting class one from this year and it's one girl at a time and see if we can make them into worthy citizens, professionals, economically independent. I mean, this is one of the challenges when people talk to us about CSR. I mean, they have the metrics of number of lives touched, social impacts. So, I don't have them in thousands directly because ours is a more intensive approach rather than an extensive approach. But we are trying to send the message, look, it is feasible to take these very poor girls and make them very productive citizens of the country and hoping that there is a bigger demonstration effect which will change societies which will allow parents and families to allow their girls to go out and live their lives.
Well, I have some friends in Bihar, and one of my very close friend, I was telling him some time ago that he should perhaps create a Bihar Angels, a Bihari Angels, right? In fact, he was the one who had taken me to the then education minister of Bihar, who also at that point in time was the uh, education and IT, information technology
I see.
minister. He had a joint thing. I will keep talking about who or what party. Perhaps you will know if somebody was holding both the positions. And
Mhm.
the introduction he took me was to talk about, I've been in the technology space and in the startup ecosystem for some time. He set up a meeting with him, telling, "Is there a way I could help something?" He was close to the minister, and uh, I heard from the minister, "What is your vision?" He had his secretary also with him, and
Mhm.
he says, "We want to make Bihar a Bangalore." I
Mhm.
asked him, "So what is Bihar a Bangalore? What would it mean? What would it look like?" So he said, "Every student coming out of Bihar should speak English, and every student coming out of Bihar should be able to do coding." So I told him, "And in what time frame you want to achieve it?" He said, "In the next 5 years." I said, "I'm very sorry." This was about 5, 7 years ago. I told him, "I'm very sorry. In the 5, 7 years, one, if you want every Bihari should speak English, you are taking away their original thinking. You're only going to make them good employees for some other company. And if you want them to learn coding, basic coding, in next 5, 6 years, technology would have changed. Already low code and no code was coming. Today, there are so many low code applications already in use. So
Mhm.
basic coding skill will not help everybody. So you need to think very differently. So you want to look at becoming a Bangalore, you should look at what Bangalore will be 10 years from now and try to work towards that versus you want to do what Bangalore was 10 years ago in the next 5 years. So you will be 15 years behind Bangalore. and it is not going to help the Bihari children. So he didn't like what I said. Uh, so my friend was telling me, "Arey yaar, what are you trying to say? You itna bada gyan kyun dete hai? Just get down to." I mean, I was I was thinking, what? Uh, why are our people not thinking so far? It is their job, isn't it? The policymakers, ministers, they need to be looking at next 15 years, not immediate next. I mean, you can't look. I mean, uh, why is it so constrained? Is the thinking?
So, Nanju, let me I'll make a request to you. One of the things we want to achieve with these girls is that very soon we are going to start BA degrees in computer sciences, BCAs and things like that. And once they are literate in technology, our dream is to set up some sort of a center in the villages where the schools are, employ these girls, and do some sort of average technology driven back office work. I mean, not just secretarial work, but some creative work, and be able to plug them into technology centers like Bangalore and Hyderabad and Chennai, so that there is an economic outcome of their education. And maybe this conversation is not the place to pick your brains, but I thought I'll put it out there, and it's people like you who can help us achieve this dream.
Oh, Gulrez, this conversation is all about you. We'll take it offline. I'm more than happy we'll take it.
Okay.
In fact, already many ideas were coming in that direction. I thought I'll set up another time with you and talk about it on
Okay.
that front.
All right.
But surely happy. Thank you so much for. Uh, I look at it as an opportunity for me that you're giving me. So thank you so much on that. So just bringing back the conversation on how the uh, government and the bureaucracy is thinking in terms of what is required for the future of our state and cities and village students. Uh, do you see a limitation for people like you to be able to impact? You could have pretty much gone into, or you can still do as a get in as an advisor to any of these departments, right?
Yeah, but I mean, uh, you
Or today
need to.
you also can get into education ministry with all your 9 years. And also,
No,
I'm
no.
just correct me if I'm wrong. It was about 9 years since the time Gandhi did the Champaran thing that he became came into national forum, right? He it took about 9 years for him from his Champaran movement to become a pan India thing.
Well, I think it was while he was in Champaran, and
That was
he
the
was.
first thing. First, he came out when he came back to India, and he started off from Champaran. But I think it took about 9 years for him to come to the uh, core of Indian freedom movement, right?
Well, yes and no. I think, I mean, it depends what you call when his prominence. I think Champaran, we are talking 1917. I think he
Mm-hmm.
comes back from South Africa, what, 15, 14, around that time, or maybe later,
Four,
if I
14, 14, I
I'm,
think. Yeah.
yeah. Uh, so he got a lot of publicity. Of course, I must be mindful that Gandhi, the movie, doesn't drive our history. But I mean, if you see that scene in Motihari where he challenges the British magistrate who has a quick district order out and he says, "I refuse to go," and so the first time he challenges the British government, where he got in a lot of publicity. But coming back to your more other question about, no, definitely, if you are in government, one would think that you can do more because, as I keep repeating, you can only get scale if you work through the government. Uh, why can't the government do it? uh, especially when things like unemployment, skilling, I mean, these are absolutely essential, immediate problems of youth in Bihar. Um, one can only explain it by saying that the political executive is caught up in other things, or they don't get political rewards for focusing on these subjects. Uh, but recently, I think about a year back, they have started focusing a little bit on education. Hiring a lot more teachers. About 230,000 teachers have been hired. More can be hired, making sure that they attend classes. I think we need both a qualitative change in the nature of intervention of the government, and we need a qualitative jump, a quantum leap on the amount of resources we are throwing at these things. I mean, if we can rationalize it that, okay, let's choose the four basic building blocks of society. And I would like to call these four building blocks of society: base for development, education, health, policing, law and order, and property rights.
Mm,
Now, let's see what the deficits are in these four. And in terms of orders of priority, I rank these four right on top. And
mm,
then I try and increase my budget size. I mean, budget size, Bihar budget size, given the immensity of the problems, is still very small. I mean, it's 2.5 lakh crores. Given the population of 130 million, 135 million, larger than most countries in the world, um, I think we need to really figure out how to increase the resources available to the state. And then you get into larger issues of, is the tax base strong enough? And then there are peripheral questions about, let's not look at it just at the state level governments. Let's look at the Panchayati Raj institutions, because many of these things can be delivered by them. Let's look at
correct.
city governments, because in municipal areas, why can't municipalities be offering education and health, and property rights, and I dare say even some form of policing? I mean, there are societies in the world where these happens. So I think we need to work on all these things. But being caught as I am in the minutiae of running a school, and nobody is about to invite me into the political club to execute these things, we have to focus on what we are doing and do it the best way we can.
Well, Gulrez, there are about 38 districts in
Yeah,
Bihar, about nearly 48, 49,000 villages.
yeah.
So, do you think there is a Hikmat model now that can be replicated across these, either at a village level or at a district level? Do you think you have that kind of a model that can actually, I mean, not necessarily you drive it yourself or as Hikmat, but you could perhaps put it out, here is the white paper. Uh, whoever wants to take it up for your own places, I will give you, I will, this is the way to go about it.
The way I think about this, Nanju, is that uh, it's not rocket science what we are doing. I mean, it's just getting the most ordinary things done on time, and perhaps with some commitment and sincerity. Get the girls in to come in, have teachers attending and taking classes, make sure the girls write their exams, make sure they have good
But
teachers.
Gulrez, as much as we both know, you've been extremely modest, because the basic courtesy is what actually needs to be taught more than the rocket science. Because though it is as simple and commonsensical, people just don't get it. So when you
I
have a champion model, why are you not? Why 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 don't you look at it in that sense?
so if a couple of things, Nanju. One is that, I mean, what we are trying to do is at best a demonstration of what can be done. You can't solve the problem of female illiteracy through Hikmat Foundation. I think we have to be realistic about it. Can it be solved through replicating Hikmat models in all the villages which you talked about? Possibly, yes. But are there people in those districts who are willing to put the who have the type of resources which fortunately perhaps I have, or who would, if they had those resources, willing to deploy them for this purpose? That's something which needs to be tested. People are into schools in all these villages, but these are all for profit schools with all its ills. So I don't want to get caught up in that. I say to myself, or we say to ourselves, because this is a very family venture with friends. I mean, friends like Bala and all are extremely supportive of what we do. We say that, look, we can't solve the state's problem, but we are from this area, we know these people. Let's try and do something which people can replicate. And if people have an interest, we are willing to tell them what the challenges are. But unless I don't think I have a successful model yet. I will have it if my girls have become, senior officers in the government of Bihar, or if they have become professionals, they have become doctors, they are economically independent. At that
Entrepreneurs, please.
Entrepreneurs, absolutely. In fact, Bala Gopal, whenever I talk about these things, he interjects just like you and says, "Why can't you talk more about entrepreneurship?" He says, "I'll give you money. You give to each of these kids, and over 5 years they have to develop something." Absolutely. Entrepreneurship, journalism, lawyers, whatever takes their fancy, musician, whatever takes their fancy. So if we can demonstrate that, then perhaps it will be easier to replicate. But let's get them to that doorstep of employment or employability, and then perhaps we can think or
Or
talk about
employment
replicable.
generators.
Uh, yeah, or an employment generator through entrepreneurship.
So, how far do you think you are, the Hikmat is, in this journey?
So I think till class 12, we have gotten to class 12. Though we are still very weak in these STEMs, the sciences, and the challenge there is you don't get teachers. All the better of science teachers would have migrated to the capital or to Delhi for much better pay. So we are trying to build a teachers hostel where we can bring in teachers from outside who live in situ in the campus, and then they can teach. The second thing is we are still building up the labs. We have junior labs for ninth and 10th, but we don't have separate physics, chemistry, bio for the 11th and 12th. Once that is out of the way, we are in discussion with some open university. There's a Nalanda Open University in Bihar, where they will give us some study centers and they will award the degree. So the study centers we are applying for is BCA, computer technology, languages, history, some core subject. I think 3 to 4 years we should be in a position where we try and play out the dream I spoke to you about, technology back offices, or get them ready to write competitive exams or get into professional courses. Though even now, if there is an integrated B.Ed program, we believe teaching and education will be a big employer in the times to come. I mean, someday we will wake up and we'll throw the type of resources which are necessary for public education, and there'll be large scale recruitment for teachers. So we want to prepare them. So I would, if you were to put a number of years, I would say 4 to 5 years. Uh, I think the first crop should be hitting the job market.
I am very biased towards entrepreneurship, so I would be always be urging you hereafter that don't look at making them employees, make them employers.
Okay.
So, do you want to give a shout out using this platform? If you want to give a shout out, calling for any kind of collaboration or support, or even volunteer teachers, because I've had friends who have actually uh, gone to Leh Ladakh. I forget his name. He runs a school there. So I've had a friend who's actually taken a break from her work, lived there, and taught for free for a year. Of course, they give accommodation and take care of a stay and such. So there are a lot of people, in my understanding, that who are actually willing to do that. And also, of course, today technology is there that you actually can bring anybody onto their classroom itself. Maybe there is some limitation in the connectivity, consistency of that, but it is manageable. Uh, so, in fact, I've been part of some groups where they have actually called me to take sessions in Africa, sitting from here in Bangalore. So, and people do
No,
that for different time zones also. So, it is. You do you want to give a shout out? Do you want to say that
no,
okay, what all?
absolutely, absolutely. And one of the reasons we want to build our teachers' hostel uh, as quickly as possible is to give these volunteers a safe and secure environment to live and do their things. We will definitely be looking out for volunteers, teachers to teach English, to teach the sciences, to teach good sports. We want to professionalize sports education. Maybe choose some sports which are can be pursued even at an individual level. We talk about archery, we talk about fencing, we talk about shooting, and these are things which girls from conservative backgrounds can do very easily. So for
Mm,
all these things, any help we get is it will be extremely appreciated. Till we have built our teachers' hostel, we are thinking of renting some place in a town close by to where these schools are in rural areas. So in a town close to it, so that people have some life after the school. But absolutely, I mean, whoever is listening to this conversation, I will post a link to Hikmat Foundation, to our email IDs, to our website, and do get in touch with us. It will must be extremely appreciative if you can come and join the journey with us.
wonderful. You just heard him. The links and details are below this podcast itself. So you can reach, you can follow the kind of work, and you can support. I'll just reiterate, you can support financially, you can support by providing with infrastructure, you can support with partnering, collaborating, in enabling with a lot of links, connect, so that they get better exposed, the students get better exposed, and perhaps even if you can support with even the teacher training, you could support even as an individual volunteering to teach or support with any of those efforts, be it in sports, extracurricular, theater, music, any of those things. So please look at it. And also, if you think you know people who want to be involved or engaging with, here is a gentleman, you know his background, you know his profile, you understood his approach and integrity and sincerity to this effort. So please share it across. And that's the least you can do to support this. Even if not anything else, share it with people who you think can support this kind of an effort. And thank you once again. And keep following and do come back. Because we are going to pick his brain to share his thing. But maybe before we just go, one thing I want to ask you again, Najim, is just this thought. So, what are your challenges going forward in the next 5 years in Hikmat effort? Perhaps that
I think
also
that
could we could circle back to get some support if there is.
so. I
Whatever you
think the
mentioned, you need support with this for now.
sure, sure. No, I mean, when I think about going forward, the topmost issue in my mind is succession and sustainability. We are not, getting any younger. Uh, so one has to think what happens next. And this sustainability is both a personnel management issue and a finance issue. Management, we have to have the team in who are committed, professionalized, and who I have them in place so that they can carry it forward. I have three children. It so happens they all live abroad, uh, though they are extremely involved in what we do. Um, and all the children have visited the site. And in fact, my daughter and my son, they have started what they call a 501(c)(3) corporation in the US, which they call Hikmat Foundation USA, for
Yeah.
foreign mobilization. Um, so I have to start thinking about succession on the management side. Similarly, on the financial side, one has to have a model where these expenses are sustainable. Now, because we don't charge fees, or we charge extremely negligible fees only to get commitment of the guardian, which is 100 rupees per month, and there also 25% we give remissions if they're very poor. So all teachers' salaries, all infrastructure build-up, everything comes from, right now it comes from us, the family, and some friends, uh, who are professionals. But how do we institutionalize the financial strength? Uh, there is CSR, it's very sporadic, it's up and down. Um, we are trying to build up a corpus of funds like an endowment fund to at least get the operational expenses for the month being taken care of. So that's a challenge to build up the endowment fund. We have also been crazy enough to think whether we can start a business and dedicate all the shares to Hikmat Foundation, and basically see if we can make some money in business to cross-subsidize Hikmat Foundation. One has seen this. I mean, the Tatas have done a wonderful job doing this. I think the Aga Khan Foundation, they work globally. Their model is this. So we have started a company. Its civil works are under construction. Let's see, it's a very small biscuit bakery type of a enterprise, small beginnings. So if we can grow that, um, so all these things really feed into the sustainability challenge, management and finances, and that we have to take care of before the sort of baton or baton, as the US call it, Yanks call it, gets passed on.
No, it's always conversation keeps talked about because most of the Indian businesses are also family-run businesses. So this conversation is always there, but it remains a challenge. It's always a challenge to do that because it's very difficult to, though your children can always be supportive, but it is one thing to be supportive and it is another thing to be able to take it on themselves. So that remains a complexity. So how just curious, how are you going about it? So are you have you created some kind of a foundation, brought in others, and you are you also trying to see if you can get people locally or people from outside who are working with you? How do you plan succession? And limitation is that your immediate family members may not be able to join.
So we are inducting non-family members into the trust. And this, some of these people are also common in the board of the company which we have formed for a business venture. Uh, they're committed people. Some of the younger lot who work with me, we are showing them a growth path within the foundation and within the businesses of the foundation, so they can think of this as a career and not just a voluntary 3-year effort. So, if they can see a future for themselves. So that's the second way of doing it. The third way is that children are not an answer, but then can they emotionally be involved? So at least they can oversee. And so far so good. I mean, the children, they travel, they come and meet. Um, of course, the US element I talked about, they're trying to do their bit. We have an FCRA, by the way. We got our FCRA a couple of months back. So we are hoping to also get some support, where we will channel those funding into the endowment fund, which I talked about. Um, Challenging, but we will see how it goes.
Okay. Now, last question. When you plan succession, okay, whatever you mentioned are very sustainably oriented, right? To sustain it and how to ensure, have the systems in place for providing them with continuity and those kind of things, even in terms of bringing sense of ownership, all those things. But how do you ensure the the continuity of your personal philosophy in starting it and sustaining that philosophy forward? How do you ensure that?
I think it's always a challenge to inculcate that culture in any organization, as I'm sure you are aware. So basically, by deeds and work, words and conduct, you have to keep sending the message that this is what we do and this is what we want to do, and this is how we should do it. Don't go for short-term benefits. This is for the long haul. Institutionalize things, don't personalize things, don't take shortcuts. And we have an advisory council, the gray-haired people. Bala is on advisory council. We have a lady out from Lucknow, Nishi. She's an educationist. She is there. We have another person from Delhi. So they are also sort of extremely helpful. Bala is very well known to the family, to my children as well. So he doesn't hold back. Um, so yes, I think inculcating the culture is important, but most of it, I mean, it cannot be through diktats. Yes, you can have a mission statement, and actually, it's my son who's crafted the mission statement in true Mackenzie style. That's where he works. And he said that, where is your mission statement? So I said, I don't have any. So he wrote one up and sent it to me.
Nice.
And so, yes, we have a mission statement, but it's more, it has to rub off on people who work with you. And let's see, we are trying our best. Ideally, we would have wanted to grow vertically faster, maybe horizontally go to the three schools, which was the initial plan, but you have to hold back because you can't do everything at the same time. We are trying.
Mm, great. And I think one other thing is that uh, most times people think I know it all, but you still put together an advisory board to sustain this philosophy, also keep sustained. So the advisory board becomes the gatekeeper for it, and to ensure that okay, you're stay in the framework. So fantastic. I really wish you all the very best, and it's amazing. And once again, I'll urge our audience and listeners to follow this effort and do support in every manner that you can, and also to share this across to who you think will be really motivated to support with or even engage with. And do come back soon to get his future perspective. And once again, Gulrez, thank you so much for making time and sharing this with us.
Thank you so much, Nanju. It's always a pleasure to talk to you.